Hi, it's Ken Moore with Global View Investment Advisors. I did this last week. I'm doing it also this week. I want to give you an update on what's going on in the economy and in the markets, and a perspective from many different investment managers, both for equities and fixed income, I've spoken with in just the last week. Well, actually, last 2 weeks. So I'm going to do a presentation for you, and let's get started. This is a recession brought on by a pandemic and a bear market. What should we do now? Well, this one is much milder in terms of number of deaths than any we've seen in recent years. We've had about 8,000 deaths. Now, in sharp contrast to what happened, for example, during the bubonic plague in the 1500s, there were 200 million. A lot less people on the planet back then. 56 million smallpox in just the and then the Spanish flu back in 1920 or so killed 45 or 50 million. So we really, the recession's being brought on not due to the number of deaths or the actual virus itself, but due to actions that we're taking to stem the virus, to save people. It's a short-term cost we're bearing in order to save a few thousand lives, tens of thousands of lives, maybe millions of lives. And what the picture here is from the movie Signs. It's Joaquin Phoenix after Mel Gibson. His father says, spotting the alien invader, which is coronavirus, is, swing away, Meryl, swing away. The good news is there's never been a time in history when there have been everyone on the planet focused to resolve one problem. From Elon Musk to Bill Gates, anybody with skin in the game here, and it's all of these people who care about humanity, are doing what they can to resolve this. This virus has pushed global markets into bear market. We will have a recession. Last week, we advised you to maintain social distance. The good news is everyone has responded. This disease may be resolved much more quickly. It's not me saying this, best minds in the world. It could be very short-lived. We could have a fast recovery. There are many positive developments. Hydroxychloroquine was found on Wednesday to be a trial. 24 people who took it all lived. 40% of people of the same test group that didn't died. This is in France. Belgium's now using it. Guess what? It made his hands into the, this study got into the hands of the president yesterday. He gave it to the FDA commissioner. It is now approved to prescribe. As of one day, never have we seen anything like this. 3M and Honeywell ramping up production of N95 masks. Ventilators, if needed, and they might not be, will be more widely available, produced by companies ranging from the companies already doing it, like GE, to companies like Tesla promised to do it. Elon Musk promised to do it. We expect the economy will drop sharply, 5 to 10% this quarter or next quarter, and it may rebound in Q3 and Q4. We think it might, think it will. So this is an event-driven bear market. It's not a time to sell. I talked about this last week. This virus is so scary because it is so contagious. For every person that gets it, they give it to 3 people. What in exponential functions, that you can have thousands, tens of thousands with the virus just in weeks. So from one person having it. Now, this curve, this is the way an exponential function works. The US was here, we're now up here somewhere. Italy was here, I think they're getting closer to here. Korea and China are already in the recovery period where their daily new cases are dropping. In the US, as I said last week, we're going to see a lot more daily new cases and daily deaths. It's getting terrible here. So on Thursday, there were 4,000. I don't know if it's an anomaly, but on Friday, there were only less than 600. But especially the good news is There weren't any in China yesterday, none. So again, we look at flattening the curve. Where did they do it? South Korea. They had an advantage. What was the advantage? The advantage was they had been through the MERS epidemic recently. And when they had the opportunity to build out a testing, this infrastructure, which we don't have. We've never had anything like this. So the closest thing we had recently was the swine flu, and it happened during the great financial crisis. Kind of hard to deal with that when we're trying to get the economy back at all after a system-wide banking failure. So, we can forgive the previous administration for not having an infrastructure and the current one for not knowing to do it in the short time they've been there. Too bad, who cares? Now what do we do? Well, I think everything is starting to fall in place. Maybe late, but starting to fall in place. And you can see here that what they did in South Korea is that they really nipped it in the bud. So in South Korea, they had, for people under 60, 0.1% mortality rate. Problem is, over 70 was 8.5%. And so the over 70 and anyone else with diabetes and other problems fell into the over 70 group. So we want to see that resolved even more than that, hopefully, and we're working on it. Good news. Bear markets like this are temporary losses because there's little impairment for most companies in most industries. Permanent impairment. Although some of the revenues are gone, we're talking about 20-year revenue streams, and more. That's how we value companies. The result is that the event-driven bear markets last for shorter durations. They're lesser in decline, although this one's already at the average point. And they recover much more quickly. So if we look back at the last case, which is the most similar case to this, the coronavirus or COVID-19, it was the Spanish flu, which came to the U.S. as soldiers came back from World War I. They came to Philadelphia. Philadelphia held a parade. All hospitals filled in 72 hours. 2,600 people died because they didn't have enough hospital capacity. They were all there at once. St. Louis closed the schools. They closed the theaters. They closed the pool halls. They banned public gatherings. Result, less than 300 people died. So they didn't flood the hospitals. The people who got infected, which were fewer, came in and they were more capable to treat them. So we want to have a St. Louis experience. The Spanish flu started in March 1918. It dropped 33%. It was back within a year. There are good reasons to believe the recession will be short-lived, even if the COVID-19 pandemic is not fully resolved quickly. Don't listen to me, listen to someone smart. Bill Gates, he's an expert on infectious diseases at the Gates Foundation. He said, countries can reopen 6 to 10 weeks later if they do a good job locking it down. Again, St. Louis did it, Philadelphia didn't. Moreover, governments are going to use every tool in their box. They're going to bicker about how to do it. They're going to, blame one another and so on, as they always do. But this will get done because it's in the national interest and they will all come together. And this chart just shows possibilities of what the recession could look like with and without fiscal stimulus. So historically, during other epidemics, COVID-19 is a worse one, more like Spanish flu, so we're going to have a worse performance most likely. But all of these other events, except for HIV/AIDS, which lingered and wasn't solved for many, many years. Now it's a chronic disease, by the way, thanks to immunotherapy drugs developed trying to cure cancer. Anyway, it's amazing the spillovers that happen from these types of research efforts. We can see that almost all of these were substantially up a year later. So there's some room for hope there too. Now, how bad is this bear market? Remember, we had a pretty bad bear market in 2018 late. And we may revisit the low. I think we already have actually revisited those lows. So especially difficult are those companies which were the cheapest, got even cheaper. And the worst hit of all were the smaller companies so far. Those companies are international small cap companies, down 37%, as well as U.S. small cap industrials and cyclicals, the value companies. They're down 39%, as if they're never going to go back to business. Both large cap value overseas in the U.S., overseas minus 36, U.S. minus 32 is way down. The S&P is down 29. So what are managers saying about this? We talked to the people at FPA. We talked to Chuck and Charles at International Value Advisors. I paid respond at Centerstone. They're singing from the same songbook. This is not a depression. Although the market dropped faster and further than any time since 1929, there's no systemic risk. Banks are strong. There won't be a depression because they're triggered by bank failures. Now again, those things which are cheap got even cheaper, especially the small companies. So there are huge, enormous value disparities, and that's a tune that the value managers sing. So they see they're really licking their chops. I mean, these guys have all added to their equity positions 10 to 20%. International Value Advisors added about 10%. The FPA guys added 10%, but they put in more money while the stocks are falling. So between the two periods, they were up 10%, which means they even put a lot more than that. Moreover, they're putting their own money in. Chuck DeLardville disclosed yesterday or the day before that he put $2 million more into the International Value Advisors Worldwide Fund. So the good news is that other countries have dealt with this. China took 17 days to peak, South Korea 16. We hope Italy's peaking now because it's terrible over there, 24 days. So we use a base case. The managers typically use a base case of 3 months of economic distress. Good news again, policymakers, Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, Angela Merkel, all woke up. They're responding. This is encouraging for global policy coordination. They're singing one hymnal. We're buying. These anomalies will not last. They're investing more of their own money. The lower risk guys say the same thing. Banks are healthy. We have a healthier economic system. The Fed is making sure the markets function. The Fed can buy all kinds of securities. I heard Scott Minerd at Guggenheim yesterday talking about the Fed maybe issuing warrants. Sure, bail blowing out. Guess what? Can't buy back stock, and we want a share of whatever the stock appreciates later. Sounds fair to me. That's what happens when you have to go to somebody for a loan. So it's critical to support the lower end middle class America. And there's going to be some bickering amongst politicians about this, but the people who are out of work because this didn't choose to be, they want to work, they just can't. All experts we consult believe this will fade over the summer. Might come back in the fall, but it's going to come back a lot weaker, and we're going to be more ready for it. They say this, they don't think there is systematic risk. There's no systematic risk. Without systematic risk, no bank failures. Without bank failures, it's not a depression. So we could get hit by an asteroid, this thing can eliminate the population. Those are things we can't. We don't need money then. It's not going to happen. Okay? Value dislocations that are happening are not real unless the world goes into depression. Even mortgage-backed securities and some of the low-risk managers we have suffered yesterday in the last few days. Every time this has happened in the past, buying the right securities, if you know what you own, has worked, even if purchased before the crash. Now that we have the opportunity to buy, they have the opportunity to buy even more underpriced securities, exchanging them for the less underpriced and make money. The biggest beneficiaries of this are going to be active managers in equity, active managers in fixed income, not indexes. Kramer's even saying this. So small flexible managers like Scion and PIMCO Flexible Credit Income will strongly benefit, as well as the mortgage-backed security managers and others. There's another thing that we have for opportunity, which we're going to try to capitalize on, which is very difficult to do. Because something called closed-end funds are priced during the day, by retail investors. They own the overwhelming majority of them. They move drastically in price. If a similar open-end fund exists, a mutual fund that only prices at the end of the day, those are typically owned by more professional investors too, institutional guys, long-term investors. Sometimes the price between the two can go haywire. The last time this happened was in 2008, and it's happening even worse to some extent now. So yesterday, for example, or the day before, the price of a closed-end version of the PIMCO income fund traded down 47%. At the same time, the fund was down less than 10%, which is what it dropped during the Great Financial Crisis. So you could buy this, if you can catch it at that price and just lock in a huge gain, which we're going to try to do that. The problem is these prices move so quickly, it's almost impossible to capture all of them. We did it in 2009, in March of 2009, and we're going to try to go in and do some now. We were looking for those gaps to reopen. The thing you need to know is we're all in this together. I own those securities that you own. Joey does. Adam does. Kurt does. We all own these securities in our own portfolios, and we all own them in our 401k. Christy, Amanda, and Aaron. We all own the same things you do. We're trying to do everything we can for you. We have no vested interest in owning investments for any other reason. So I'd like to thank you for being on the call today, and I look forward to talking to you later.